Good afternoon, students. How are you today? Okay, before we begin our lesson, we're going to be participating in a very interesting game. It's on the carbon dioxide gas. And there's some short questions that we will be responding to. We have been learning a lot of information about carbon dioxide. It says, how much do you know? And the first item it says, in the 10,000 years before the Industrial Revolution, in 1751, carbon dioxide levels rose less than 1%. Since then, they've risen by, let's take a guess, students. How much would you say? 11. Lloyd is saying 11%. Therese? 37. Let me hear from Dana. 62%. Let's just click on 37% and let's see. It says, right, from 1751 to 2003, humans added 466 billion tons of carbon to the atmosphere in the form of carbon dioxide. And 85% of all human-produced carbon dioxide comes from burning coal, natural gas, oil, and gasoline. Next item. Let me have Erin reading for us.
Burning fossil fuel is the major source of human produce carbon dioxide. But what is the second leading source? Okay, it says what is the second leading source besides burning fossil fuel? Lloyd? Deforestation. Let's click on deforestation and we're going to submit. It says, right, forest clearing produces about a fifth of current carbon dioxide emissions. Interestingly, cows which produce massive amount of methane. And what is the symbol for methane? CH4. It says, are becoming a cause for concern in countries with large cattle industries. Third item, we produce more than 30 billion tons of carbon dioxide per year. Where does the majority of the CO2 end up? A, is it inhaled by trees for photosynthesis? B, it enters our oceans? Or C, it lingers in the atmosphere? What is your response, student? C. Okay. Correct, student. It says 40 to 50% of carbon dioxide stays in the air and 30% is dissolved in the oceans. Let's move on. Fourth item. Compared to other greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide is most effective at trapping heat near the surface of the earth. True or false? Let us check. It says wrong. It's incorrect. Water vapor usually has more heat trapping power than carbon dioxide. It is more abundant. And it has both carbon dioxide and water vapor interact in crucial ways. More carbon dioxide means the atmosphere gets warmer, which traps heat and warm up the atmosphere even more. Climate scientists, carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere will increase, more acidic oceans, decreased soil moisture in many regions, stronger hurricanes, or all of the above? All of the above. That's a given. It says correct, okay? Let's go to item 6. The average American adds how much carbon dioxide to the atmosphere per year? And we have 3 choices. Half a ton, 20 tons, or 1 megaton. What would be your prediction?
Half a ton.
Half a ton? Dana said 1 megaton. Let us check our answer then. They said A. Let's check on A. It says the correct answer is B, 20 tons per year. Number 7, which planets have carbon dioxide in their atmosphere? Earth, Earth and Venus, Earth, Venus, Mars. What do you know about Mars, students? Christian? One of the smallest planet? No, I don't think so. It's dense, it's considered a red planet. It has a lot of dust. It's very hot. Then we have Earth, Venus, Mars, and Jupiter. So which of those planets there have the most carbon dioxide in their atmosphere? You're saying C? Let us check. Earth, Venus, and Mars. It says right. Both Venus and Mars have atmospheres made up of about 96% carbon dioxide. Earth's atmosphere, we have been taught that it has a variety of different gases. Okay, it's not only carbon dioxide. Item 8. Which of the following would be the biggest impact on reducing carbon emissions? Growing our own vegetables, stopping deforestation, taking all fossil fuel burning vehicles off the road, or shutting down all fossil fuel power plants. D. Joseph said D. Some of you are on this, you're saying C. Let us go with D, the first choice, like what Joseph said. Remember, we're trying to reduce carbon dioxide emission. Very good, Joseph. It says shutting down fossil fuel plants and moving to clean, renewable energy sources such as the sun and wind would have the biggest impact. Coal-based plants are the least carbon efficient power stations. Item 9. Now on that side there is a graph on the left, students, and it says the graph to the left, called the Keeling Curve, maps the overall rise in atmospheric carbon dioxide since 1958. But why does it have a zigzag shape? Why does it have that shape going up there? Showing cyclical rises and falls in carbon dioxide levels. Now they have given us two options. A, is it because the amount of carbon dioxide breathed in by vegetation varies seasonally? Or B, because humans use less fuel in the summer to heat their homes? Read it carefully before you choose an option there. Rodolfo, you want to challenge it? A? Let's go with A. It says, right, the uptake of carbon dioxide by forests and plants varies with the seasons. And most vegetation is in the northern hemisphere, where most of the land is located. In the northern spring, new plant growth uses up more carbon dioxide. In the northern fall, plants and leaves die and release the gas back into the atmosphere. And the last item, students, if humans, now they are speaking to us, if humans stop emitting carbon dioxide tomorrow, what would happen to global temperatures? We have A, they would immediately begin to drop. Now think about the carbon dioxide molecules and gases in the air. They would continue to rise, the temperatures would continue to rise and get hotter. Or C, they would stop rising, flatten out, and then drop. C, let us check. They would stop rising. Even if, listen to this, it says even if we stop all carbon emissions right now, it says the hundreds of billions of tons of the carbon dioxide molecules since the Industrial Revolution would continue to warm the planet. For how long? No one knows for sure. It says, but estimates range from hundreds of years to thousands of years into the future. Now, did you like that activity? Yes, we were able to review a lot of different information about carbon dioxide. Now we're going into our lesson. And our lesson for today, students, will be looking at the effects of mitigation and adaptation on population and displacement. Our learning outcomes at the end of the lesson, we should be able to give a brief description or explanation of what adaptation is as compared to mitigation. We will look at factors that contribute to population density. Why is it that certain places have more population as compared to other settlements or nations? We will look at factors that contribute to vulnerability. Why are some communities more affected than others? And we will summarize the effects of mitigation and adaptation on population density and displacement. No, I know that you have been hearing about these two terms before. What is the difference between adaptation and mitigation? Rodolfo.
Miss, adaptation is, say, for when a disaster has already happened, then you have to adapt, meaning you would have to take certain measures because to keep on living with knowing that this will keep on happening, but
yes,
to keep on living with it. Mitigation.
So you start making changes because of the impact that you're seeing. Go ahead, Rodolfo. And mitigation
is when you do preventative measures before that certain thing happens.
To reduce the impact and so that you do not become so vulnerable. Very good, Rodolfo. I have a chart here. It says adaptation. The aim of adaptation, students, to climate change is to reduce society's vulnerability to the impacts of climate change. What are some impacts of climate change before we go on? Think about all that you have learned. What are some impacts? Some of the negative adverse effects. Droughts. Come on. Sea level rise. More severe storms. Very good. Come on, there's so many. Wildfires. Animals attack. Invasive species. Spread of diseases. There are so many. It says climate change mitigation now means limiting the extent of future climate change by reducing greenhouse gases. So we have to make policies and regulations. Okay? It can also mean removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. For example, by planting more trees. Now, some examples of adaptation practices. The first one says change in farming techniques. We know that chemicals and pesticides and fertilizers, they add salt particles and matter to the soil, and they start degrading the soil texture and content, moisture as well. So our farmers have to adapt with the time and change their farming practices. Also, we can build houses on stilts to avoid the impact of flooding or flood-prone areas. We can also build sea walls to buffer the increase of wave action. We can reduce the use of aerosol sprays in our homes and in our environment. Now, population density. When you hear the term population density, what comes to your mind, students? Population, what do you think about? People. And density? And amount or growth. Very good. So population density refers to a geographic area having a huge populace with limited available land space. And displacement describes the mitigation or movement of a certain group from their native land. With the impact of climate change, more and more communities will start to migrate and move because of the impact. And they will become displaced. In which areas of the world would we find the most populated densities? Think about the different countries that you are familiar with.
China.
Yes, Josette, go ahead.
China.
China. Let me hear from Therese. Or you're going to say China too, Jamie? Did not hear you? Europe, very good. Come on. United States, yes. Okay. What factors would make certain places around the world have a low population density or a high density? Why would people want to move to a place like the United States that has a high population density already?
Because they're developed.
They're developed, very good, Therese. What else have we heard about places like for first world nations like the United States? Besides being developed, what else do they have to attract or offer to people that might want to migrate there?
Job opportunities.
Job opportunities.
A safer life and what we like to call the American dream.
Excellent, Rodolfo. Well said. And what about places that have low population density? How can we describe those places?
Underdeveloped.
They're underdeveloped. What else can we say about them?
Isolated.
They're isolated. Do you think you would have a lot of job opportunities there? Okay. What about Belize? What is the populace or the population of Belize right now? Josette?
Around 300,000.
It's around or almost over 300,000. What attractions do we have in Belize to keep our people here? Another critical question.
Resources.
We have a lot of resources. What else do we have here? Some people might say we might not have, and some of them, especially our young people, want to migrate for better opportunities. Okay? Let's go on. We're going to be watching a very brief video on population density and displacement.
Where do most people live? Are they close together or far apart? People are not distributed evenly around the world. Every 10 years, each country carries out a census to count the total number of people and record where they are living. Thanks to the data these provide, we know that most people live in urban areas, and more than half of the world's population lives near the ocean. About 90% of the Earth's people live on 10% of the land, and about 90% live north of the equator. Population distribution is determined by climate, natural resources, work opportunities, and social services. Density refers to how many people there are in a given area. Usually, cities have a higher population density than rural areas. The city-state of Monaco has the world's highest population density because it's so small, whereas large countries such as Mongolia and Australia are the least densely populated.
Now, what did we hear from that video just now, from the documentary? What were some of the key statements that were brought out in regards to population density? Where do most of the people live in the world? Where do most of the people in the world live? I'm not hearing Therese. Tessa, sorry, go ahead.
Urban areas.
In urban areas, Rodolfo?
Most people tend to live in the northern hemisphere.
90% of the people live near, or I would say north of the equator. What else did we hear, students? What are some of the things that people gravitate to in order to live a better life? What are they looking for? Josette?
A better climate.
A better climate, very good. Rodolfo?
Definitely a better job opportunity.
Job opportunities. There are at least 4 to 5 factors, determining factors. Catrice?
Social services.
Social services. People need access to health services and different things that the community can provide. What else do they gravitate to?
Resources.
Resources, natural resources. Very good. It says, based on world census data, half of the world's population lives near the seas or the ocean. We have many people that rely on the sea for fishing purposes. 90% of the world's population is using 10% of the land. So there's so much land out there. 90% of the world's people lives north of the equator, like what Rodolfo said. Population distribution is determined by climate, social services, work opportunities, because people need to live and survive. Also, natural resources. And cities have higher population densities than rural areas. Now, I found this also. It says the world population is the total number of living humans on Earth. As of today, it is estimated to number 7.056 billion people by the United States Census Bureau. So you can see birth rate continues to increase and the population continues to grow. But there are certain countries and nations that have higher populace than others. It has physical, this chart here is showing some of the reasons why people would move to certain cities that have higher densities as opposed to some places that have low densities. For example, people look at the relief, and when we use the word relief, we are speaking about the shape of the land, the shape and the height of the land. There are some people that like to live in the hills, like in the Cayo district here, and there are some people that like to live on the flat, like the lowlands. We have people look for physical resources such as the natural resources, areas rich in resources such as coal, oil, wood, and fishing. And it says these places tend to be highly dense with people. Areas with few resources tends to be sparsely. There is only a few people living there. For example, in Belize, we have Monkey River. Monkey River was once a town because it had over 2,500 people at one time. But now the population has declined. And I believe back then, many years ago, their industry was with the banana belt, but I believe that has changed, and now the people who are living there are relying on fishing products. Okay, but most of the inhabitants from Monkey River have now moved out from that. It's now a village. We also have Gales Point. A lot of people used to live there, and now people have died, people have migrated to the United States, and the settlement is few in numbers. People also look for the climate. They want to live in a city that has a temperate climate, sometimes hot, sometimes rainy, okay? And it says areas with extreme climates of hot and cold tend to be sparsely populated. For example, places like in the desert. You will not find a lot of people living there because of the hot temperature. Countries that are fighting for different natural resources, okay? People don't want to stay in an unstable society. And that is one of the reasons that why people migrate. Also for social, it says group of people want to live close to each other for security, like what Rodolfo said in the beginning of the lesson. People want to feel safe. It says other groups of people prefer to be isolated, and we have example, Scandinavians. Another factor that will, I would say, determine high density in a country is the economic, the wealth. Good job opportunities encourage high population densities. Limited job opportunities cause some areas to be sparsely populated. People need to move where there are job opportunities or employment. Now this map highlights the world population density, students. And over here it's with the millions. Okay? Now if you can see, what part of the world are we looking at here? Look at your world, the map with the continents. What part of the world is this here? Which continent is this one here? Africa? Come on. So what is over this side here? North America. And remember, we found that out in the documentary, that most of the people live north of the equator. Over this side? Come on. How can we, what part of the world is this part here? What continent? Asia. And below here? Come on. Europe, huh? Okay. Now, this chart shows 10 countries with the largest population. And the first one, I believe Joseph was the one that said China. We have China with a population of 1,354,560,000 people. And their population continues to grow every day. Okay? And this was from December 1st, 2012. So it's something very, very recent. Thank you, Janelle. Okay? Now, if you look at India, their population is also on the increase. It's also on the increase. We have the United States ranking third with the highest population in the world. And then we have Japan at 10. It says countries ranking highly in terms of both total population and population density. Even though they have a lot of land space, the population continues to grow. Okay, and the leading country there is India, followed by Bangladesh, Japan, the Philippines, Vietnam, United Kingdom, South Korea, Taiwan, Sri Lanka, and Netherlands. Students, if we look at Japan, Vietnam, Philippines, South Korea, those are the countries that are on the north of the equator. Now this is from our statistic here. Our population census taken in 2010. And we had a lot of people that went around interviewing people in their homes with all different sorts of things. It says urban and rural distribution. If you notice, it says the total for our country. How many? What is the total there, students? 312,698 people living in Belize at that time. How many lived in urban? For the overall, for the country, how many lived in urban areas? 138,796. And in the rural? 1,827. Now it says, let me see something. It says more people are living in the rural areas. Okay? Why do you think that more people are living in the rural areas? Jamie?
Because of their space.
Because of land space. That's the most important factor there. Land space. But many of these people come into the city, because it is the commercial center. And they come into the city to work. Okay? Now, vulnerability. We have been hearing about this term, vulnerability. What does it mean to be vulnerable to something, to a system or to something? Rodolfo?
To be open or defenseless to something.
You become defenseless or you are easily affected by it. Okay? It says vulnerability of a system refers to its physical, social, and economic aspects. The level of vulnerability of a society. What makes people susceptible to different things. That is what it is saying. And in this case, we're speaking about climate change. So what are the factors that will make people easily affected by climate change? We have the first one, a human environmental system. That is where you live. What are the different things that surround you that could affect you? Your geographical region. Are resources easily accessible? For example, as a person living in Punta Negra, have you heard the term Punta Negra, the name of that village before? Yes. It's way down south. How would those students in Punta Negra be affected when it comes to acquiring higher education? You live in the city and you have access to school. What about those young men and young women who live in those remote villages?
Traveling distance.
Traveling distance. They have to look out for that. They need to get access to funding for scholarships and so that they could pursue more schooling. So they have challenges based on the geographical region where they live. We have natural system, things that could affect us like disasters, human health and life. Just this morning on the TV they were speaking, one of our Minister of Health was speaking, I believe it was in the House meeting that they usually have at the House of Representatives in Belmopan. And the Minister of Health was speaking about, based on reports that he has gotten from the different health sectors, that they found out that the different health clinics and departments have been distributing at least 4 times the amount of medication for this year alone. But at the same time, there are health challenges because they were speaking about the different cases that have came up in Orange Walk at the health center there. So we're giving out medications, but yet people are still becoming ill, or they might be given the wrong medication because of lack of technical skills that have not been acquired by our medical practitioners. Okay? So that's a health issue. Existence and cultural identity. Income and livelihood. I must say that some people might be vulnerable because of their cultural identity. And I will mention the example of the Amerindians that live in the Amazon rainforest. They do not want to lose their cultural practices, and regardless of the different climate change impacts, they want to live there, but they will be adversely affected. Income and livelihood. If you don't make a lot of money, how can you adapt? External, and these include floods and disasters, increased prices in goods and services, unsustainable farming practices. If you live in a rural area and you only have this one plot of land and you practice the slash and burn system every year, what eventually will happen to your plot of land?
Fertile enough to, if you want to plant any crops or something like that.
The soil after a while will become degraded, and so that farmer will not be able to produce, and he or she will lose his or her source of income. Very good. Poor pre-existing health condition and also inequities in access to resources. Not every person has the same, I would say, ability to access resources. Okay, some have more privilege than others because of where they live and because of finances. Now, students, it says, think about communities and villages in Belize, such as Monkey River. And we spoke very briefly about Monkey River just now. Gales Point, Punta Negra, City River, Mullins River, and some of these places are down south. Hope Creek and Hopkins. What are some factors that will make these communities vulnerable to climate change? And we spoke about a few just now. What are we doing here in this class today, students? You are getting information. So you will become, there is a term that will describe how you will become at the end of the course.
Educated.
Educated or empowered with the knowledge that you need to go out into your homes and school to make the changes. Some of the people in these areas will not become empowered, okay, because they do not have the access to the different resources. It says people all over the world are being confronted with the reality of climate change. For some, climate change is simply a matter of changes in weather patterns. Oh, it's raining very hard today. Things are a bit hotter, a bit colder, a bit more uncertain. It says for others, it is already a matter of survival. Too little water or too much, not enough food to go around, risk to safety and security. Now, I heard on the news just this week, a man was on the news crying out and saying, Mr. Prime Minister, I need money to buy my packed bread. And some people are already crying out because there is shortage of job opportunities and they have families, they have children to feed. So it's a matter of survival for them. It says the real injustice of climate change is that those who have contributed least, and when it says least, for example, a country like Belize, we do not manufacture aerosol sprays. So we are not contributing to the global warming problem, as opposed to some other countries who have the major industries. It says the real injustice of climate change is that those who have contributed the least to its causes will be the individuals or the communities that suffer the most. Factors that will make communities vulnerable: lack of empowerment, lack of funding, resistance to change in attitude. Even though we will start educating people about the impacts of climate change, some of them will not have a positive attitude to adapt because they do not want to change their lifestyle. Lack of vision and leadership by our leaders. They have to think beyond and not just for today. Refusal to comply with buildings and environmental policies. Instead of just going and squatting on a piece of land, no, we have to assess. If I build my house here, what impact will it have on the environment and on others? Refusal to alter or change farming practices. Reduction in labor force that will inhibit people from getting access to natural resources or basic needs. Gender inequality. In some communities, the male persons have more access and rights to the female. You want to share something with Alpha?
It's usually the male that have the more dominant space.
Yes. In many of our homes, insecure rights to resources exacerbate vulnerability. Socioeconomic status. Those who are poor cannot make adjustments in their life. Also, people become vulnerable because they are not a part of the decision-making process. For example, when our leaders make policies and laws, our poor people are not involved. They are not given a chance to vote on different ideas that are presented in the community. For example, through a referendum. This is just a picture here showing flooding, some of the impact of climate change already that is hitting hard here in Belize. It has a flood, and I took these different captions from different reports. It says a flood warning remains in effect tonight for Belize as the residential moisture from Tropical Depression 16 continues to dump record rainfall. All the rivers in the south, most notably the City River, are at flood stage and rising. Last night, rising waters forced 46 residents from Hope Creek to flee their homes at 1 a.m. in the morning. Now, do you think you can be prepared for such a disaster of that nature at that time? No. It says, fortunately, those waters did not go very high. But the memory of Artura flash flood is still fresh, and most of those residents remain in a shelter tonight, and the village is on edge. And if you notice, the lady cannot come out from her home because the area is inundated, it's flooded. Look at another person affected by flooding here. Everything has been become saturated with water. Here, someone is trying to save their mattresses by tying them and lifting up them very high in their home. Even our highway, it says the skies are clearing up over most parts of the country with limited rains coming down. But the effects that the waters have brought with them were evident yesterday with the flooding of areas in the Cayo district, even on the Western Highway. In the village of St. Matthews, the entire highway was flooded. No access for transportation. Now, Monkey River is a town, was a town, but it's now a village in the north of the Toledo district. And we have been speaking about Monkey River that they are facing a very serious problem. And what is that problem, students? Erosion. Okay? The villagers have seen a large part of their shoreline receded. It has now disappeared. It has villages and communities will have to adapt. They have to make changes. People will have to become environmentally aware to impacts of climate change and how these changes will impact their homes. Citizens around the world will have to seek alternative ways to garner additional income, more money, so that I can provide for my children and my family. People who lack skills will become more impoverished. And we're thinking about people in the rural areas and have to rely on social programs for assistance. Now we're going to be watching one more very, very brief video on cities and climate change.
Today's city leaders face challenges they've never faced before. Not only have they got to provide the basic infrastructure upon which people rely, they've also got to take up the long-term challenges of climate change and resource depletion.
City administrators are now becoming far more aware that they've got to do more than just keeping their systems ticking over.
Cities must take the lead to become more resilient. This involves rethinking the way they design their infrastructure, from their energy, waste, water, and transport, to rethinking their business models and policies.
Solutions are needed that provide for more people, but using fewer resources, so that we become more resilient, but also have less of an impact on the climate.
As cities grow, as cities develop, then we get involved in how to make them more and more efficient. Arup are at the heart of low-carbon technology, be it transport, be it energy generation, be it low energy consumption. All of those technologies are being understood and are developing very fast. The issue is being able to implement them.
We have funded, designed, built, and operated many of the world's major infrastructure projects and buildings. Behind the technical excellence, we understand the regulatory and policies needed to support it.
And that depth of knowledge allows us to understand not just how individual components of the city operate, but how they integrate together to provide the resilience that cities need moving forward. There's no one-size-fits-all solution. Every city's different, and climate change is happening very rapidly.
Arup understands these challenges and can help support the cities on their path towards resilience.
Arup sees how different cities are run, sees success in cities, because we're based in cities and we work with city administrators.
Our global reach and depth of technical knowledge means that we can offer each and every city the best, most forward-looking solutions.
What have we learned from that very brief documentary? What do cities have to put in place in order to develop resiliency as we experience the different climate change impacts? What do we have to do? What are some of the measures that we have to do? Yes, sir?
We have to be more aware of the amount of emission that we release into the air, because as the video stated, not each and every country or city is the same, so we have to take different measures towards the amount that we release.
Excellent, Rodolfo. Each country, each person has to become extremely aware of the amount of carbon dioxide emission that they are releasing or putting back into the atmosphere. Just yesterday, someone mentioned to me, do you know eventually that the world can become or be described as a water world? Do you know what that means, students? What is the impact of carbon dioxide molecules? What does it have to do with our glaciers and our ice caps? Eventually, our ice caps and glaciers are going to be melting, and more places will see an increase in water flooded areas. Okay? So when the person said that to me, I said, wow, one skill that we will have to learn if we want to adapt in a world that is covered by water is to swim. Very good. We will have to learn get our survival skills. Yes, Catrice?
But still will be able to survive if you know how to snorkel and use those things.
Yes, you will have to learn those different type of technical skills there. Josette?
Miss, you will die. We will need to know how to swim, we just die.
Exactly, because more and more the water will continue to increase and rise. Okay? Now it says thousands of people. This is how, with the impacts of climate change, this is how it's going to affect people and make people become more and more displaced. They will have to move from the place that they were born and they love and where they live. Thousands of people will migrate from around the world, and this is already occurring. From rural settlements to more urban settings. People will abandon coastal areas and move to higher grounds. In migrating, people will look for security. They want to be safe. Soil texture. Am I able to grow my crops here? Am I able to practice subsistence farming and feed my family? People will look for relief. What type of land do I want to live on? Social services. Do I have access to health amenities, infrastructure, and opportunities that offer a better way of life? These are the different things that people will be looking for. Climate change will increase the stress and mental health issues of local communities through disease, death, and displacement. More and more people will continue to move, and we cannot stop that. Let's think about Belize, where we live, the country that we cherish so much. And we have been learning so much about the different impacts of climate change. We are all considered to be ambassadors. What is something that you can take back to your school or to your home or even to your community that could help make a better place, make Belize a better place? Try to connect all the dots, all the different things that we have been learning about climate change. What are some things that we can do to reduce the carbon dioxide emission? Plant more trees. Jamie? Recycle. Josette?
Walk to school.
Walk to school. Water storage and water reuse. Thank you. Okay, these are just some that I included here, students. The first one, learn how to harvest water for commercial use in our homes. Use the land in sustainable ways for provision of foods. Learn to swim, and we mentioned that since sea level rise continues to increase. Develop a vocational background. Even though you might be skilled in one particular area, or as you grow and you have a particular career, it is best or wise to have more than one skill, so that even if you lose this job, you can be employed by another person and you're able to assist yourself. Assess human activities. Anything that you're going to do, think about the impact that it will have on the environment first before you put action into place. Okay? Thank you, students.